All right, so who is Derek Briggs? He's a professor at Yale of the Yale Peabody Museum Natural History, curator in charge of invertebrate paleontology. This is his mailing address, his email, phone number. His bio says, my primary research interest is in the preservation and evolutionary significance of exceptionally preserved fossil biotas. Exceptionally preserved. They don't even think that's possible. He says this is just a piece of dirt. I mean, he's researching this and he doesn't want to see this? I can't understand that. This involves a range of approaches from experimental work on the factors controlling decay and fossilization through studies of early diagenetic mineralization, organic preservation, to field work on a range of extraordinary fossil occurrences, their taxonomic description and analysis. I'm 15 minutes from Derek Briggs, and this has no interest to him whatsoever. Backed up by DNA. Well, here, let me show you. By the way, this is mudfossils.com, Mudfossil University. I opened up as a response to Derek Briggs' intransigence to do his job. So this is from Helix Biolab. This goes back to 2015. 3 mud fossil samples, DNA extraction, PCR, DNA sequencing, and analysis. And it was all done with clean, ancient DNA extraction kits, whatever they do. And I mean, it was an extended process. It took months to get this done, and they had to do all kinds of different things. And these were the 3 different specimens, and 2 of them were giants and 1 of them was a standard size. 1 of them was the lung I showed you, 1 of them was a mud tip, and another was a gigantic fingertip. I mean, it's beyond belief. I understand that. That is not the issue. It is true. That is the issue. Now, you come down here, and 2 of them were dense DNA, 1 of them was not dense, but it still had one of the target spots in it that was 100%. So it's like hitting the lottery 1,000 times in one day for getting 100%, 100 base pairs in a row. You don't get that unless you're there. So they did a blast search on using the DNA sequences from these different things, and what they got was Homo sapien mitochondrial cytochrome B gene and Homo sapien mitochondrial D loop region. They are mitochondrial DNA that's related to us. And this is not something this was dense DNA. The guy at the lab, I talked to him, I have a recording of our discussion, and he said it was dense and there was no question, there was no contamination. They did the negative controls and all that business. And it goes down through all the CTAG business sequencing and all that, and it's a verified test from a certified lab. So to just disregard that, I find that hard to believe. In genuine truthfulness, to just disregard that and dismiss it as it can't possibly be right, when it's backed up by everything else, the specimens, the anatomists, let me show you something else. Fingertips, DNA certified. Lung, DNA certified. Everybody's probably seen the goose head here. You see the feathers in that goose head? The feathers in the back of the head there? See his eye and his little beak? That's where the neck is in the back. The neck will show the articulations in the neck very well. The preservation's unbelievable in this stuff. And if you look well, you can actually see where the neck was and where the throat part of the neck was and where the bone part was. And he died laying like this. These are all products of the Great Flood. They're mud fossils. I discovered these in 2012, let's say. And they all are flat like this on one side because they were all in the flood. They were preserved in the salt waters of the flood. And then they laid flat. See how flat they are? They're all flat like this. And I mean almost all of them. Now, some of them I think were later. Like this is a giant human fingertip. That's the pads of the fingertip on the bottom. Those are where the actual tendons in place in there. And it moves like this. and we broke off. There's where the black blood, the vein blood goes here, and the red arterial blood runs on this side. And here's one that eroded out. It was about the same size. I believe it's from this same hand. It was found in the same hole. There's where the vein is. The veins don't blow out, you see? The veins don't blow out, but the arteries do. The arteries don't have any valves in the arterial network, because it's only designed to come back. It can't go the other way. I mean, in the veins, they don't have the veins have the valves. Arteries don't have the valves. Let's just put it that way. Here's an apical tuft, and if you get any autopsy anatomists, they understand this. And I did have the top autopsy anatomist in the world, Gil Headley, who understands fascia above anyone in the world. I worked with him 6 years ago before anybody was looking at the fascia, because I discovered it was a preservative. This is pleura, same thing as fascia. And it's a seal that seals your inside from your outside. Your skin is just like fascia. Every bit inside of you is coated with something that keeps it away from the other chemistry in you. Now, Gil just discovered, he was just at a convention in Germany, and I've been talking about membranes being the cause of cancer, because that's what I'm finding. I can see these membranes, and I see how protective they are, and if they leak, you're in trouble. He says, yes. Their membranes are the things that are leaking, and they're causing cancers. Everywhere in the body you have membranes. You have synovial sheaths, you have mucous membranes, you have bacterial colonies. These bacterial colonies are being invaded, killing the bacteria, and then your gut can't protect itself with the mucus. That's what's happening. And it happens to the pancreas. Like, there's people right now, I think maybe Alex Trebek is a victim of this, where his pancreas attacked itself, because the toxic chemicals in there had no way for the mucus to keep it away, because the bacteria gets invaded. And that happens because we take antibiotics. See, all of this runs in a circle. But what I'm getting at is we're losing all of our ability to think anymore because of PhDs. It's an impediment now to knowledge. PhDs are the ones that are causing the trouble in intelligence anymore. Derek Briggs says, all of this is nothing. There's not one bit of biology here. And everything I did was wrong. All of my anatomists was wrong. My DNA was wrong. Done with ancient protocols, 2 certified labs. They had to be wrong. The anatomists had to be wrong. The CAT scans had to be wrong, which were done by the top CAT scan in the world. They do racing car engines and big, heavy equipment. They do tolerances. They see if there's any imperfections in the metals. Absolutely fabulous. 7 CAT scans there. He sent me to University of Texas. What a disaster there. That ended up having the police and a lawyer call me from there and say, don't bother these people anymore. Leave them alone. They would not answer one question after we had a CAT scan done of a human head. And they just were so upset about this that they refused to speak. And I went kind of off the edge, and I emailed everybody down there too. And I did the same thing to Derek Briggs. When he wouldn't respond, I emailed all of the top people at Yale that I could find. And then I got an email back from him that said, go find somebody that understands rocks. Very arrogant and very dismissive, and not right, because they're charging a hell of a lot of money to people for things that they don't even care if they're right or wrong, as far as I could determine, unless his competence level is that poor. And I can't believe that anybody could dismiss everything that I have presented honestly, with the honest intention of that it's really not real, Roger. Oh, you're just not right, sir. No, get the hell out of here, because I'm not going to accept this. I couldn't care less about it. That's my opinion, and that is my opinion taken from when I called and they hung up on me right in my own ear. Hi, Derek, it's Picklick. So, the only one that was nice down there was Morgan, Armin Morgan. Armin was a nice guy. He talked to me, but he was just his assistant. I don't even know if he knows anything about it, but he was interested, it sounded like to me. But certainly Derek Briggs wasn't. Anyway, that's the story. So, let's see. I'm going to have to fail Derek Briggs from Yale at Mudfossil University. Let's just take a look at his abilities. Okay, it's Roger, Mudfossil University, and this is to Derek Briggs at Yale University and all you other universities. You are fiduciaries, and you are failing at this moment. A fiduciary relationship, one person is in a position of vulnerability, which is the student, justifiably vests confidence and good faith and reliance and trust in another whose aid, advice, or protection is sought in some matter, which is their teaching, so that they can make more money and be able to pay off their student loans and to be able to be successful in life. And they can only do that if they agree to do what the teacher says and to say what the teacher tells them to say and agree to what the teacher tells them to agree with. So, in such a relationship, good conscience requires a fiduciary to act at all times for the sole benefit and interest of the one who trusts that person to act in their best benefits. So that person trusts the teacher to be knowledgeable, to be accepting of new information, to be inquiring, to be a fiduciary, to act in their best interest to secure that they have spent their money, very large amount of money, wisely, so that they can have a better financial future. Now, what I am going to show you puts that in extreme doubt for Professor Briggs specifically, but it seems to be systemic in the academic arena, that there is no interest to examine anything that comes from outside of their inner sanctum. And all that comes from their inner sanctum is words from the past, because if you dispute the things, you are normally fired, just as the case was with Mary Schweitzer and the guy that worked with her, and they found the dinosaur DNA was not as old as these people would like to claim, and they fired him, and she is now on the outs with academia saying, I don't care what they say about me, I know what I'm doing. So let's see what Derek Briggs has to say, if he knows what he's doing. Okay, Professor Briggs said this about my research, that the certified autopsy specialist must be wrong. He couldn't possibly be right about the specimens. The DNA tests, 3 of them, done by 2 certified labs using ancient protocols, that couldn't possibly be right. Didn't need to see that. CAT scans, 7 of them by specimens showing exact anatomy of DNA certified specimens. That can't possibly be right. He doesn't need to see that. He could see it online. It was all wrong. Recreating the process in my lab, I couldn't have possibly done that. That must be wrong. Biochemistry matches in every, well, not every time, but in most cases, the biological remains in the mud fossils is so perfect that it actually still has the blood and tissues. I will show you that right now. But what his remarks to me was that there was nothing biological that I presented. There was no need to see or inspect anything whatsoever. I was wrong about everything, and I must find someone who understands rocks. That was his last statement to me. You know, in an email. He's never spoken to me. I tried to call him, but the phone just clicked off as soon as I mentioned who I was. I don't know what happened. So I find it very difficult to believe that Professor Briggs is acting in good faith. And in that case, he is not a good fiduciary. And in that case, there is legal ramifications. And in that case, it is up to a student to pursue that, not me. Oh, by the way, I don't know if anybody's seen this, a systemic look at serial problems, sexual harassment of students by university faculty, Utah Law Review. A serial systemic problem. It seems to be there's a lot of trouble in academia, but you know, who am I? I'm not anyone to point fingers. I'm just trying to get the truth. This particular hand that you're seeing right here is 36 inches wide. It's been DNA certified using this fingertip that came off of it. That's the pads from under the fingertip. I believe we determined it was a left thumb or right thumb. I can't remember. That was several years ago. This is from a different specimen, but it is a DNA certified lung. That's the pattern of the lung. Any anatomist will understand that. That is the pleura. That's the depression of the heart. It's a left lung. That is a piece of mud fossil meat. It's literally, when it came out of the ground, it was red, just bloody like meat. It's been here 4 or 5 years. That is an apical tuft that is at the tip of a finger. This is an eroded fingertip. That is the distal phalanges. That black pattern there is what they call a bone silhouette. That's the vein, that's the artery. The arteries blow out, the veins don't because they have clamps. That's an apical tuft that would be at the tip of a fingertip. This is a knuckle. Of course, it's very highly eroded, but that's the bone ball of the knuckle. This side is gone, but you can see the actual muscle, if you look at it carefully, on this side of the bone ball. The other side, as you can see, is eroded away. That is the tendon. That is the part that runs down from the finger, the side of the tendon, into the palm of the hand. So all of that stuff has been certified by an anatomist and DNA certified as well on this and the hand. All rejected by Professor Briggs without examination and in the face of all of this undeniable evidence. I see a problem there. By the way, this is ultra cool. You see this silvery stuff? That's literally the skin. See the skin lifted up here and here? The silvery part is silicon. It's your skin is 50 times more dense in silicon than the rest of your body. And that's the silvery look to it when they petrify in the mud fossil thing. Now, if you took your hand and this is a left hand, if you take your hand and splay it out, you're going to see that pattern runs over here, and this is the bumpy part of the bottom of your hand, that pad. 3 feet wide. And all the other stuff is out there. All the other bones are out there. They're stuck in the ground. I can't get them out. They're too big. I hurt myself doing it. But I would have liked to have some interest from Yale. I thought maybe they'd be. I'm only 15 minutes down the road. And no interest whatsoever. So I find it just a problem. Okay, my good friends, we're going to end the nonsense today. That is a vagina cave. You see that little tiny split right down the center there? That is what's called the abdominal seam. Let me show you that. This is how fetuses develop from the embryo. It's called a blastula. It's a big round ball at first, and then it caves in, and then it seams right here. This is the different seaming structures. It creates an internal cavity, which is your abdomen, and that is the seam that runs right up through that vagina. This is another vagina. That is the seam in this vagina. They all have them, and they come in enormous sizes because the creatures were enormous. This is not a joke, and this is not porn. This is reality, and it's time to be taken serious. There's another one. You see the split right up there? You cannot miss that. If you look carefully, you're going to see what I'm talking about. The reason that split is there is because the abdominal cavity in the Great Flood, which was the biblical Great Flood, which is the rub with academia. They hate anything that indicates there was a God. The biblical Great Flood caused these creatures that were written about by Enoch and the biblical characters that were all in history, understood in history, drowned in the Great Flood, in a saltwater flood, which preserved the tissues from the salt water. Then they became entombed in the mud, and then as it washed away, they were mineralized. As they did, the cavities contorted and twisted and split. Fascia, as I discovered in 5-6 years ago, well, more than that probably, but say 6 years ago, is the preservative feature. And fascia is nothing more than your skin, your tissues that coat every single cell in your body. I'm calling your skin fascia. They call it your skin, your epidermis, whatever you want to call it. It is a coating that coats and protects the inside of your flesh from the outside. And all your other skin and your fascia and your pleura on the lungs, like this lung right here, that was DNA certified. That is a fabric mat. That fabric mat is what keeps these things separated. When you die in the mud fossil conditions, bits and pieces fall apart, and it's because of the fascia. They are completely encased, just like that bone. That bone is fully articulated. There is every little bit of that bone is here. Even this little triangle here, you see that? If you can see that triangle is what the Greeks used to call that tunica. It's a membrane that wraps bones, and bones are wrapped in a membrane that protects them from salt water. That's why you don't end up with calcium bones like they find scraps in the deserts, because these get invaded and everything turns to what they call source rock in the petroleum industry. And the last little bit of piece of bone is right at that little spot. I don't know if you can see it, but that's where that last little bit is. And other than that, it is a fully, perfectly preserved thing. Now, Professor Briggs down at Yale rejects all this. He says that it's just a piece of dirt and there's no biology here that I've shown him, and that all of my research is nonsense. My DNA tests, 3 of them done by ancient protocols by 2 certified labs, must all be wrong. The 7 CAT scans I had done must be wrong, and those were checked over by an autopsy anatomist, owns his own autopsy school, teaches all around the world, verified exactly what I'm saying, and is the leading expert in fascia. He must be wrong, and my chemistry must be wrong, the biology must be wrong, the anatomy is just an accident. Derek Briggs, that's his opinion. So I have my opinion of his abilities is if he can't understand what he sees, I can't believe that they're allowing him to teach students, and I can't believe students wouldn't ask for their money back. Why wouldn't you ask for your money back? He's refused to talk to me for 6 years, and I'm told that really is actually a criminal offense. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but that's what lawyers are telling me. I'm just trying to protect everybody, and I asked Derek Briggs if he would please look into this, and he's refused. So what can I do? I have to give him my own report card, because now I have to start at my own university. It's Mudfossil University on YouTube. We don't take any money, we don't take any bribes, we don't take any tuition. You go out there, you learn, you work with us, and we all work together. Now, Professor Briggs, in geology, we have to give you a failing grade. Archaeology, another failing grade. History, anatomy, biology, chemistry, overall competence. You passed in reading and arrogance. What I'm told, I don't know. This is from lawyers. I don't get involved in this, but they say it's a fiduciary failure and it's a gross criminal neglect, which there are penalties for, I assume. I don't know. It's not my part of it. I want the truth out there, and as far as I'm concerned, you are the one that stood in the way and told everybody that, I don't know whether they told anybody or not, but they certainly knew about it. They asked me, why didn't I go to you? And I said I did, and you won't look at it, and then they laughed at me. So whether you told them or not, it doesn't matter, because everybody said the first thing. They said, you're right down the street from Yale, take it over to Yale. I said, he won't look at it. So they said, well, you're obviously a moron. I said, well, that could be. But I do have these DNA tests. I do have the specimens. I do have an anatomist test. I do have the CAT scans. I do have the chemistry. I do have the biology. I do have the anatomy. So I think I'm standing on pretty firm ground. And I think it's time to reverse this. And I would say you academics better turn around quick, because what I'm hearing from the lawyers, and they're contacting me, telling me that there is a case here. I'm never ever going to get involved in any of that. But if I was a student, I'd damn sure be doing it. I can tell you that right now. I'd be calling them all up. Because, what? Think of the money and the failures of these institutions to look, to do what they're vested, their whole purpose in life is to provide education, truthful education, not just read them old books. It doesn't work. That's not right. And that's what's happened. I mean, I could tell you that's a fact. Because I have done this for 5, 6 years now of contacting people every day, over and over and over and over and over. And nobody will contact you back because it falls outside of it goes into the God realm. Giants, oh, the guy's a creationist. And I heard that a dozen times, and then there's never another statement from anybody. So, all right, you failed in God too. I'm sorry, Derek. What can I say? You know, you didn't make it the grade at Mudfossil University, sir. Maybe at Yale you're doing all right, but not at Mudfossil University, my friend. All right, so that's it. I would make sure that people start to understand this. We're being put around in circles, just tossed in the air and shook up and down for our money. And that's what I'm seeing. Now, another thing is I have 58,000 people that are in my university, Mudfossil University, on YouTube. They're all subscribers, and they're invested in this. They like this. They're interested, and they like to make comments, and they like to have interaction. They don't want to just be told what to say and what not to say. Now, this is from Gary Evans over in England. He found this in a mud flat. He said, "Ooh, look at this, Roger. This is just a lung." And I said, "Well, it could be a lung." And then he said, "Well, let's see what happens." Ooh, look at that. It's a lung when he broke it open. Blood all over it. Now, these become preserved, and I understand the preservation process. Derek Briggs has not been able to successfully preserve anything, apparently. He says that everything turns into gush. I read some of the things that he's talking about. He's trying to do this, but he won't listen to me, so he's never going to be successful what he's doing, I don't think. But, you know, that's up to him. I just want this to be allowed into mainstream. I don't want it, because everybody I talk to says, "Oh, take it to Derek Briggs down at Yale. You're right down the street." You say, "Well, look at it." So that's the end of that story. They'll laugh at me and call me a moron, and that's the end of it. So I want some answers there, Professor Briggs. What do you have to say about this? By the way, Professor Briggs, this was only 2 weeks later that mudfossil lung in the dry condition turned into just dirt, and it would particulate into nothing, which is where you guys look in the dusty, dirty conditions to see if you can find something, and all you're picking up is scraps. No paying attention to reality, that's what you get.